My name is Sarah, and I need to tell you about the day that changed everything. It was a humid Tuesday morning in October, here in Miami, the kind of morning where the air conditioning fights a losing battle against the Florida heat, and you can feel your shirt sticking to your back before you even step outside. I was sitting in my tiny apartment in Kendall, sipping my morning coffee and scrolling through my phone when I remembered to check my lottery numbers. I had bought the ticket 3 days earlier at the gas station on 8th Street. The same numbers I'd been playing for 2 years. My grandmother's birthday, my daughter's birthday, and the date I graduated nursing school. When I saw those numbers match, my hands started shaking so badly I dropped my phone. $23 million, after taxes. It would still be enough to never worry about money again. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at the cracked linoleum floor, and for the first time in years, I cried tears of joy instead of exhaustion. You see, I'd been working double shifts at Jackson Memorial Hospital for the past 3 years, ever since my divorce. My ex-husband Mark had left me with nothing but debt and a broken heart. I was raising my 8-year-old daughter Emma alone, living paycheck to paycheck, sometimes choosing between groceries and electricity. My family knew how hard things had been for me. But as I sat there with that winning ticket in my trembling hands, something stopped me from immediately calling everyone. Maybe it was the memory of my sister Lisa's wedding 2 months earlier, when she'd made pointed comments about my discount store dress in front of all the relatives. Or maybe it was remembering how my brother Carlos had laughed when I asked if I could borrow $50 for Emma's school supplies, telling me I needed to get my life together. I decided to wait to see how my family would treat me during the hardest time of my life, before they knew money would never be an issue again. The first test came that very afternoon. I picked up Emma from school, and we stopped by my mother's house in Healy. The October heat was suffocating, and Mom's ancient air conditioner was barely working. She was fanning herself with a church bulletin when we walked in. "Mija, you look terrible," she said, not even getting up from her recliner. "Are you eating enough? You're getting too skinny." "It's been tough, Mom. Work has been crazy, and with Emma starting soccer season, the expenses are piling up." My mother's face hardened. "Well, maybe if you hadn't been so picky about men, you wouldn't be in this situation. Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter married a lawyer. She never has to worry about money." Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, can we go get ice cream?" "Not today, baby. We need to save money." My mother rolled her eyes. "Sarah, you need to stop being so dramatic about money. It's embarrassing how you act like you're homeless when you have a job." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't say anything. The winning ticket was burning a hole in my purse, but I needed to see how deep this went. That weekend, Hurricane Miranda was threatening the coast. Nothing major, but enough to make everyone nervous. I called my sister Lisa to see if she wanted to evacuate together with the kids. "Oh, Sarah, I wish I could help, but we're staying at the Fontainebleau until it passes." David booked us a suite. David was her husband, a real estate developer who never let anyone forget how successful he was. "Why don't you just go to one of those public shelters? I'm sure they're used to people like you. People like me." The words stung more than the humid wind whipping through my apartment windows. That night, as Emma and I rode out the storm, alone, eating peanut butter sandwiches by candlelight, the second major blow came in early November. Emma had been complaining about stomach pains for weeks, and when I finally scraped together enough money for a doctor's visit, they wanted to run expensive tests. The insurance would cover some of it, but I was looking at nearly $2,000 in out-of-pocket costs. I called my family for help. My brother Carlos, who drives a brand new BMW and lives in a waterfront condo in Brickell, listened to my explanation and then sighed heavily. "Sarah, I can't keep bailing you out. You need to learn to manage money better. Maybe get a second job or something. I've got my own family to think about." "Carlos, this is about Emma's health. She's your niece, and she's your daughter. Figure it out." My sister Lisa was even worse. "Honestly, Sarah, you always have some crisis. Maybe if you stopped buying coffee every morning and actually budgeted, you wouldn't be calling us for money all the time." I hadn't bought coffee out in 6 months. I made it at home to save every penny. My mother's response was the worst of all. "Mija, you know I'm on a fixed income, but have you considered that maybe God is trying to teach you something? Maybe this struggle is supposed to make you stronger." I hung up the phone and looked at Emma, who was curled up on her second-hand couch, holding her stomach. That night, I used my credit card for the tests, knowing it would take me months to pay it off. Or it would have, if they had known the truth. The test showed Emma had a minor food sensitivity, nothing serious, but the worry had aged me years in a matter of weeks. Through it all, my family's absence was deafening. November flew by, in a blur of overtime shifts and tight budgets. I was playing my part perfectly, letting my exhaustion show, buying generic groceries, driving my 15-year-old Honda with its rattling air conditioner. Meanwhile, the lottery ticket sat in a safety deposit box downtown, waiting. Thanksgiving was approaching, and my mother announced that this year, everyone would contribute to the family dinner. Lisa would bring the turkey, Carlos would handle the sides, and I was assigned dessert and drinks for 12 people. Mom, I'm really tight on money right now. Could I maybe just bring one thing? Sarah, everyone else is contributing. Don't be selfish. It's one day a year when we come together as a family. I spent my last $80 on pies and soda, money I had been saving for Emma's winter clothes. She had been wearing the same 2 sweaters to school, alternating them throughout the week. Thanksgiving Day arrived gray and drizzly, typical for late November in Miami. The humidity made everything feel sticky and uncomfortable. I showed up at my mother's house in my oldest dress, the one with the small stain near the hem that I couldn't afford to replace. Lisa opened the door wearing a designer outfit I recognized from the Aventura Mall. Her diamond earrings caught the light as she looked me up and down with barely concealed disgust. Oh, Sarah, that dress again? Inside, the house smelled amazing. Carlos was in the kitchen with his wife Sophia, arranging expensive-looking side dishes in my mother's best serving bowls. Their kids were playing in the living room with new iPads. Aunt Sarah, Emma ran to her cousins, excited to see them. But I noticed how they barely acknowledged her, too absorbed in their expensive toys to pay attention to their cousin in her hand-me-down clothes. During dinner, the conversation inevitably turned to money and success. David, Lisa's husband, was going on about his latest property development project. We're looking at a $12 million return on this one. Of course, you have to have money to make money, right, Carlos? My brother nodded, cutting into his turkey. Exactly. Sophia and I are thinking about buying a vacation home in the Keys. Life's too short to not enjoy the fruits of your labor. My mother beamed at them. I'm so proud of how well my children have done. Well, most of them. The dig was obvious, and everyone at the table knew it. I felt my face flush, but I kept eating quietly. Speaking of success, Lisa said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Sarah, are you still working at that hospital? I heard they might be laying off nurses. I'm still there, working extra shifts to make ends meet. Maybe you should consider a career change, David suggested. Healthcare is so unstable these days. You need to think about your future. Easy for you to say, I replied quietly. Not everyone can just switch careers when they have bills to pay and a child to raise. The table fell silent for a moment. Then Carlos spoke up, his tone condescending. Sarah, I think your problem is your attitude. You're always playing the victim. Life is hard for everyone. Playing the victim? My voice was steady, but I could feel anger building in my chest. Carlos, when was the last time you had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries? That's not the point. The point is, successful people find solutions instead of making excuses. Lisa nodded emphatically. Exactly. Look at me and David. We work hard for what we have. Maybe if you stopped feeling sorry for yourself and actually made an effort. Made an effort? I could feel my control slipping. I work 60 hours a week. I haven't bought myself new clothes in 2 years. I drive a car that barely runs because I can't afford the repair. What more effort should I be making? My mother slammed her hand on the table. Enough! Sarah, you're ruining Thanksgiving with your negativity. This is exactly why you're in the situation you're in. You have a bad attitude about everything. I looked around the table at these people I called family. Lisa was smirking slightly, clearly enjoying my humiliation. Carlos was shaking his head like I was a disappointing child. David was checking his expensive watch, probably calculating how much money he was making per minute even during dinner. Their children continued playing with their tablets, completely oblivious to the adults' conversation. Then I looked at Emma, my sweet daughter, sitting quietly beside me. She had been listening to every word, watching her family treat her mother like a burden. like a failure. The hurt in her eyes was what finally broke something inside me. You know what? I said, standing up from the table. You're right. This is exactly why I'm in the situation I'm in. I walked to the front door, where I'd left my purse. Everyone was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, the one I'd been checking every day for the past 6 weeks, watching my lottery winnings sit there, growing with interest. Sarah, what are you doing? My mother called from the dining room. I walked back to the table and set my phone down in the center, screen facing up. The account balance was clearly visible, $23,847.293. The silence was deafening. Lisa's fork clattered against her plate. Carlos choked on his wine. Even David looked up from his watch. What is this? My mother whispered. This is my bank account. I won the lottery 6 weeks ago. $23 million. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chaos of shock and confusion. That's impossible, Lisa stammered. You've been broke this whole time. You said you couldn't afford Emma's medical tests. I could afford them just fine. I wanted to see what kind of people you really are when you thought I needed help. Carlos stood up, his face red. Sarah, this is insane. If you had money, why didn't you tell us? We're family. Family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Carlos, when I called you about Emma's medical bills, you told me to get a second job. You said you couldn't keep bailing me out. When exactly were you bailing me out before? That's different. I didn't know. You didn't know what? That I was desperate, that your 8-year-old niece was in pain and I was terrified and broke. You knew exactly how bad things were for me, and you chose not to help. Lisa had gone pale under her expensive makeup. Sarah, you don't understand. If we had known you actually won the lottery, then what? You would have treated me differently? You would have been kind to me? I picked up my phone and looked at each of them. That's exactly the point. You treat people based on what you think they can do for you. My mother was shaking her head frantically. Mija, this isn't fair. We didn't know. If you had told us about the money. Mom, 3 weeks ago I came to you crying because Emma was sick, and I didn't know how I was going to pay for her tests. You told me that maybe God was trying to teach me something through my struggle. You knew I was desperate, and you chose to give me a lecture instead of help. But if you had money, why did you let us think you were struggling? Because I wanted to see who you really were. And now I know. David, who had been quiet this whole time, suddenly found his voice. Sarah, this is brilliant. Do you realize the investment opportunities we could explore together? I've got some projects that could double your money in 2 years. I stared at him in disbelief. Even now, even after everything, he was trying to figure out how to profit from my situation. And this is exactly what I expected, I said quietly. Emma had been watching everything with wide eyes. She tugged on my sleeve. Mom, are we really rich now? I knelt down to her level, my back to my family. Yes, baby. We are. And we're going to be okay. Does this mean I can get new shoes for school? My heart broke a little more. You can get anything you want. I stood up and faced my family again. They were all staring at me with different expressions. Shock, greed, calculation, desperation. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and calm. Emma and I are leaving. We're going to build a new life, away from all of this. Sarah, wait, Lisa said, reaching out toward me. We can talk about this. We're family. Family forgives each other. Forgive. I stepped back from her outstretched hand. What exactly are you asking me to forgive? The fact that when you thought I was desperate and alone, you treated me like garbage? The fact that you made fun of my clothes and my situation in front of my daughter? The fact that none of you could spare $50 to help with school supplies for your own niece? Carlos stepped forward. Sarah, be reasonable. We didn't know how bad things really were. You knew exactly how bad things were. I called you crying, begging for help with Emma's medical bills. Your response was to tell me to figure it out myself. But now that you have money, we can help each other, my mother said desperately. I raised you, Mija. I sacrificed everything for you and your sibling. And when I needed you to sacrifice a small amount to help your granddaughter, you couldn't do it. The room fell quiet again. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of traffic on the Palmetto Expressway, the normal rhythm of Miami life, continuing while my world shifted completely. Sophia, Carlos's wife, spoke up for the first time. Sarah, I think you're being unfair. We all have our own problems, our own expenses. We couldn't have known you were going to win the lottery. That's exactly right, Sophia. You couldn't have known. So you treated me based on what you thought I was worth to you. And what I was worth was nothing. Emma was still holding my hand, looking back and forth between me and her relatives. I could see the confusion in her eyes, but also something else. Relief, maybe. She had seen how they treated us, even at 8 years old. Where will you go? My mother asked. And for the first time, I heard something that might have been genuine concern in her voice. I don't know yet. Maybe we'll travel for a while. Emma's never seen the ocean from anywhere but Miami. Maybe we'll go to California, see the redwood forests. Maybe Europe. The world is pretty big when you have the resources to explore it. You can't just take Emma away from her family, Lisa protested. Her family? I looked around the room. Her family told her mother to go to a homeless shelter during a hurricane. Her family laughed when she needed school supplies. Her family made her watch while they treated her mother like a burden and an embarrassment. I walked over to where Emma's cousins were still playing with their tablets, completely absorbed in their games. They hadn't even looked up during the entire conversation. Hey kids, I said gently. Say goodbye to Emma. We're leaving. They glanced up briefly, said bye without much interest, and went back to their screens. You see? I said to the room. This is your family. This is what you chose to prioritize. I walked back to Emma and took her hand. Come on, baby. Let's go home. As we headed toward the door, the protests started again. Promises of change, explanations, justifications. But it was too late. The test was over, and they had all failed spectacularly. Sarah, please, my mother called after me. Don't do this. Don't break up our family over money. I stopped at the front door and turned back one last time. Mom, I'm not breaking up our family over money. You already did that when you decided. Money was the only thing that determined how you treated people. We left them there, sitting around the Thanksgiving table, with their expensive clothes, and their expensive food, and their shallow hearts. On the drive home, Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Mom, why were Grandma and Uncle Carlos and Aunt Lisa being so mean to you? When they didn't know about the money. I pulled over into a McDonald's parking lot and turned to look at her. Sometimes, honey, people show you who they really are when they think you don't have anything they want. But you're my mom. Isn't that enough? I started crying then, right there in that McDonald's parking lot in Kendall, with the Miami skyline glittering in the distance. Yes, baby. You're more than enough. You're everything. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat in my little apartment and made some decisions. The first call I made was to a real estate agent. The second was to Emma's school, to let them know she wouldn't be back after the Christmas break. The third was to my supervisor at the hospital, giving my notice. Over the next few weeks, my phone rang constantly. My family had apparently spent Thanksgiving evening discussing strategies for getting back into my good graces. The calls started apologetic and evolved into desperate, then angry, then manipulative. Lisa showed up at my apartment one evening, with tears in her eyes, claiming she had always loved me and had just been going through a tough time in her marriage. Carlos sent flowers with a card about family forgiveness. My mother had our priest call me to talk about the importance of family unity. But the call that surprised me the most came from my ex-husband, Mark. Word had apparently gotten out about my lottery win, and he was suddenly very interested in reconnecting. Sarah, I know things ended badly between us, but we have Emma to think about. She needs her father in her life. Maybe we could work something out. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Mark, you haven't paid child support in 2 years. You missed Emma's birthday, her school play, and every soccer game this season. Now you want to be involved? People change, Sarah. I've been thinking about what's important in life. What's important is $23 million, apparently. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. By December, Emma and I had moved to a beautiful house in Coral Gables. Nothing too flashy but comfortable, with a pool and a garden where Emma could play safely. We enrolled her in a private school where she could start fresh after the holidays. The best part was watching Emma discover what it felt like to not worry about money. New clothes that fit properly, art supplies and books whenever she wanted them, a bicycle that wasn't bought secondhand, the simple joy of being able to say yes when she asked for something. But more than the material things, I watched her confidence grow. She was no longer the quiet, worried child who had learned not to ask for things because she knew we couldn't afford them. She laughed more, spoke up more, dreamed bigger. Christmas morning, just the two of us in our new house, was perfect. Emma opened present after present, her face glowing with joy. But the best moment came when she looked up at me and said, "Mom, this is the best Christmas ever. Not because of the presents, but because you're not sad anymore." I had thought I'd been hiding my stress and worry from her, but children see everything. "I'm not sad anymore, baby. We're going to be okay now. Our grandma and Uncle Carlos and Aunt Lisa going to come visit our new house." I considered lying, giving some gentle explanation that would preserve her relationship with her extended family. But Emma deserved honesty. "I don't think so, sweetheart. They're upset with me right now. Because you have money now. Because I found out that they only wanted to be nice to us if we had money." She thought about this for a while, playing with one of her new toys. Then she said, "That's silly. You were the same mom before and after." "That's right, baby. I was." In January, we started our new life properly. Emma loved her new school and quickly made friends. I began exploring volunteer opportunities, ways to use my unexpected fortune to help other single mothers in situations like I had been in. The first charity I supported was a fund to help hospital workers with emergency expenses. I thought about all the nights I had gone to bed, worrying about money while trying to save other people's lives during my shifts. No healthcare workers should have to choose between their own family's needs and their patients' care. My family's calls became less frequent as it became clear I wasn't going to change my mind. The last conversation I had with my mother was in February, nearly 3 months after that Thanksgiving dinner. "Misha, I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe we made mistakes, but we're still family. Emma needs her grandmother." "Mom, Emma needed her grandmother when I was working double shifts and couldn't afford to pay someone to watch her after school. She needed her grandmother when she was sick and scared and we didn't know if we could afford the medical tests." "Where were you then?" "I was here. I was always here. Being here isn't the same as being present. Being here isn't the same as helping when help is needed." "So you're going to punish us forever?" "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just living my life with people who care about Emma and me for who we are, not what we have." That was the last time we spoke. Spring in Miami brought the usual heat and humidity, but also new beginning. Emma and I took our first real vacation to Colorado, where we saw mountains for the first time. We hiked and laughed and made memories that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with freedom. One evening, as we sat by a campfire in Rocky Mountain National Park, Emma asked me if I missed our old life. "Do you mean, do I miss being worried about money all the time?" "No, do you miss Grandma and Uncle Carlos and Aunt Lisa?" I thought about it honestly. I miss who I thought they were. I miss having a big family for holidays and celebrations, but I don't miss feeling like I wasn't good enough for them. "I don't miss them being mean to you," she said simply. Looking back now, almost a year later, I can see that winning the lottery was just the beginning of the story. The real prize wasn't the money. The real prize was the clarity. I learned that true family isn't about blood relations or shared holidays. True family is about the people who love you when you have nothing to offer them, except yourself. True family is about showing up when someone needs help, not when someone has something you want. Emma and I have built a new kind of family now. Our neighbors, the Garcias, who invite us for dinner every Sunday and never once asked about our financial situation. Emma's teacher, Miss Rodriguez, who saw potential in my daughter and nurtured it, regardless of our background. The women I volunteer with at the shelter, who understand what it's like to start over and rebuild from nothing. These are our people now. These are the ones who see us for who we are. My lottery win gave me the freedom to discover what really mattered. It wasn't the money itself, though. Financial security is a blessing I'll never take for granted. It was the ability to see people's true hearts, including my own family's, without the fog of desperation and need. Would I change anything about that Thanksgiving day? The hurt, the disappointment, the painful realization that the people I had loved my whole life saw me as less than worthy of their basic compassion. No, I wouldn't change, because that day I learned the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is having money. Being wealthy is knowing your worth and surrounding yourself with people who recognize it too. Emma and I are wealthy now, in every sense that matters. And you know what? When I think about next Thanksgiving, I'm not sad about the empty chairs around our table. I'm excited about the new traditions we'll create, the genuine laughter we'll share, and the gratitude we'll feel for the people who chose to love us when they thought we had nothing. That's the real jackpot. That's the prize worth winning. Se aqui essa história tocou você, curta, comenta, se inscreva no canal e não deixe de assistir às outras histórias que preparamos com coração para você.